My name is Alexander Olesen, and I am trying to beat the often path with a company called Babylon Microfarms, and we build distributed vertical farming systems to help businesses and communities grow their own fresh food.
How local is local enough when it comes to our food? We know that shipping a banana halfway around the world doesn't make any sense, but isn't local farm to table better? These are words we've been hearing a lot about lately. Wouldn't it be better if you could get your produce from a mile away from the grocery store, or better yet, from inside the grocery store itself? So many places that currently import and transport food could potentially be growing that food themselves thanks to this innovative vertical hydroponic growing solution from Alexander Olesen and his company Babylon Micro Farms. He's been named to Forbes 30 Under 30. He's received millions in funding for his idea so far, and the concept is relatively simple. What if places like IKEA that do tremendous volume of food sales could simply grow their food and their produce and their herbs inside the store instead of having anything shipped or imported at all? Wouldn't that be better? It has tremendous implications for places like hospitals, senior care, living places, and of course, grocery stores. All kinds of places could benefit from it. So it's an exciting concept. I can't wait for you to meet Alexander Olesen, CEO of Babylon Microfarms. This is Beat the Often Path, and I'm Ross Palmer. Well, I like that candid honesty. First of all, thanks for joining me and that you're trying to beat the often path. I like it. There's a sense of humility there. How would you say that you're trying to beat it? In what sense are you in progress on this journey?
I guess in all senses.
Sure.
We are fortunate. So just coming up to my sixth work anniversary, and I've been working on this project for over 7 years now. So, there's definitely, it's been a grind, but I think now, we're a team of 35 people. We have distribution across North America, and we're starting to really see that kind of commercial traction that is super exciting. But, it is a day in, day out pursuit of trying to make the company, take off.
Yep, I understand it very well. Do you regret the decision to do it, or are you still happy with the path that you're on?
Oh my God, absolutely. Very, very, very happy with it. It's all encompassing, but I think that's what I signed up for, and I'm very fortunate to have a team around me who seem to have signed up for it as well, one way or another, and together we're making things happen.
Well, that's very fascinating. So what broadly speaking is the concept then? And what are you working on, and what was the original idea that sparked it all?
Yeah, so hydroponic farming, for those that don't know, is growing plants in water instead of soil. It's a way of growing crops 2 to 3 times more quickly using 90% less water, no pesticides or chemicals. It is a much more sustainable and resource efficient way. And it also allows you to grow plants indoors. And so I was introduced to this concept through a project at the University of Virginia where I was studying. And we were basically looking at how to build these farms in refugee camps. And that was the original project, part of the social entrepreneurship program. And through that, I was like, well, micro farming is possible. You could actually do small scale farms, and this could actually help people feed themselves or businesses to support themselves. And that was the original insight, now 6 years ago or 7 years ago. And we started looking at like, what would it take to do that here in the US? And so we ended up founding the company to build what we call a remote management platform. So it is an Internet of Things technology that allows us to run these farms remotely, and in doing so, make them really easy to use so that people with no green thumb can be successful farmers. So that's the core technology. And then today we sell modular vertical farms. They're about the size of a double-door refrigerator to food service operations. We work with like IKEA, LinkedIn, other places to grow vegetables on site that they can use in their food service operations.
And on your website, you have a bunch of use cases, like you mentioned, of course, IKEA and some of the larger stores, but you also mentioned elderly homes. So where do you see this fitting in general, and who do you think should be using this, and how will it change their lives?
Yeah, so I think the common theme we see is engagement, right? And for across food service, the standard is local, and farm to table is no longer the kind of high-end restaurant. It is the standard. That is the expectation that's being set. However, it's very hard for businesses and communities to convey that. And so the micro farms help kind of serve an experiential need there. But we also grow high volumes of produce. Like we have a lot of communities that rely on the micro farm to provide all of their culinary herbs or all of their salad greens. That's exciting for us from a self-sufficiency point of view. But where we see a lot of impact, especially like senior living homes, we have them doing therapy and activities. We have hospitals using it for like long-term care. We also work with like Goodwill and other nonprofits for workforce development. And that's basically training people how to grow their own food and then how to make a meal with it. And so I think the farms really kind of serve as a tool there to both educate and inspire the communities that they serve with how to actually grow your own food and what to do with it once you've harvested it.
You mentioned IKEA. They seem to be a rather forward-thinking brand, me being somewhat ignorant. Are they a current partner of yours or a desired future partner?
They are a current partner,
Okay.
And they have food service operations in all of their stores. You
Right.
can go and get your Swedish meatballs, and if you're in Charlotte, North Carolina, you can go and get some Swedish meatballs with dill sprinkled on it from a micro farm. And that's a new initiative that we're testing with them that I hope to expand. But yeah, they're looking at it very much from a sustainability angle, like how can they be self-sufficient in some of their herbs and other ingredients? Could they even grow them on site? And that's where we come in.
It's such a wonderful idea. And, we talk about grocery stores, and many movies and documentaries have been made on the idea of, how far does it take a banana to get to you in your local grocery store? Why don't grocery stores just implement this? Why doesn't every grocery store make all of this type of thing in the store? Why does it ever come from somewhere else?
They can and they will. That is the future. It's quite popular in Europe and Asia at the moment. Units very similar to ours. There's some challenges around the business model and unit economics. That's stuff we're really working to address. But that is part of the future: is the indoor farms being kind of co-located with distribution centers and grocery stores.
Yeah, because that drives me crazy. You've got this row of produce, and it's all, especially here. Again, I know that Europe is a little bit better, but here it's all in this very thick, single-use plastic packaging. You can buy spinach, you can buy lettuce, and because we're all worried about salmonella and other diseases, it's in a very thick plastic tub, which is just ridiculous. And the idea that you take this out and you throw that away instantly, it just all feels so horrible, especially knowing that it's been shipped in from somewhere else. So why not just replace all of that with stuff that's just grown in the store with no packaging whatsoever? And then that's just solved.
That's right.
Yeah. So you're like, this is what I'm working on. That's it.
Yeah.
Do you think it's feasible? I mean, you mentioned, we know that scale and unit economics, that these things improve with time. What would be a wild best case scenario there? Do you think that's something that could happen in 5, 10 years, 30 years? I mean,
yeah. 5, 10 years is definitely is. And we see kind of line of sight with our manufacturing to, in 2 or 3 years to be at a point where we could save people money across most major produce categories.
Okay.
And you're still going to have constraints around labor, real estate, other things, but at least the economics around like your lettuce, your herbs, a lot of the major categories are clearly more, they're better for the consumer, and the economics make sense for the buyer. That's going to drive adoption.
What do you think the risk is if we do nothing with these problems? What's the problem as you see it, and what's the risk of taking no action?
I think it's, being prepared is the only way to be. And I think that when you see tools becoming available, whether it's renewable energy through to indoor farming, like adopting them is really one of the most viable paths forward to creating a more resilient future.
But what would be when you say resilient, I guess I just want to dive in a little bit, because I think people like you and me who have been immersed in this for a bit longer, we sort of have an innate sense of these issues, and certainly from my conversations I do. But what is the problem or the risk, or what is the fear? What does lack of resilience mean for humanity in the next few decades with regards to food?
Well, if you look at the system today in the U.S., for lettuce alone, it's shipped. 95% of it's shipped from a couple of counties in California to the West Coast. You're looking at 50+% wastage. It's hugely inefficient, and you're ultimately leading to a worse product for consumers. And that's a luxury in the U.S. in the Western world that you can do that. But in a lot of parts of the world they're living, the food supply chain is very, very fragile. And so crop failures can lead to kind of mass famine. I don't know where indoor farming fits in solving that, but I think creating systems that are resilient and sustainable is the way things are moving, and it has to accelerate. And creating tools like what we do is one of many parts of that.
In a world where so many businesses in general fail, we don't know the percentage. Some say 20, some say 50, some say more than that, where a lot of small businesses and startups fail in general. Do you think that it's choosing to make an already very difficult thing much harder to choose to be a social entrepreneur versus just trying to sell more t-shirts to people on YouTube?
No, I actually think that the attitudes are shifting. Certainly when I look at like a lot of my contemporaries in the UK or the US, like people are putting like society first, right? And the triple bottom line is like, what was it? Planet, profit, and purpose, right? And so, or people, planet, and purpose, and profit. And so, like, really balancing those three things. If you think about like a sustainable company, you're not really. It's not a zero-sum game, right? And in the traditional sense, I think those companies, it seems antiquated to not be trying to reallocate some portion of your kind of company towards supporting those three things. So yeah, I think it's really just the way things are going. I think some companies that have like a, buy one, donate one, right, model, which is fantastic for the companies that do, that only works in some cases. But to actually have a socially beneficial business, I think is the way things are going. And it's certainly not a zero-sum game.
What do you think the blueprint is? Because this is the most fascinating thing. And I've talked about this a bunch, but so many books, they gloss over the startup phase, especially if you read biographies or autobiographies, as I do, of wealthy people. Read Warren Buffett, read whoever. And the first page is they were struggling. And then after they made their first $1 million, and then it just continues. And 90% of the book is after this mark in their life. But there's very little that's talked about this crucial phase of the decision to start something in those early days. For yourself and for other people who might want to do something, but they're not quite sure what. Either they're in a job that they don't like, working for a corporation that they don't believe in, or they're young and they're not quite sure what to do with their life. How do you concretely make steps towards making a company like this?
It's hard to say because there's so much you don't know when you start. I think it's really just a commitment to showing up every day, like day in, day out, rain or shine, and then also committing to learn around it. I think like me and my co-founder regularly talk about strong opinions weakly held, right? It's the sort of willingness to charge at what you think is the right direction as hard as you can until new information becomes available, and then change really quickly and be willing to. And I think that takes, it's very hard to build a company around that and for people to be that comfortable with change, because it's, especially if they work, a lot of people who work at bigger companies, you don't have to deal with that kind of dynamic culture, but you need to be able to deal with that to get a company off the ground.
Well, thank you very much for sitting and for sharing all of these stories. It's a very fabulous concept. I'd encourage everybody to check out the website. It's very, very interesting. Before we wrap things up here, is there anything that you would like to say or to promote, or where can people support your work and see what you're doing and maybe even be a part of it if they want to join your team?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me on. I'd say check us out at babylonmicrofarms.com. We're pretty active on Instagram and on LinkedIn.
All right, sounds good. And with that, the official podcast is over.